Hi, everyone. I'm so glad that you're here. This is one of my most favorite topics to talk about. Um, not well. So we were having a chat before we got started, and I was saying, a lot of people come away from this feeling like, oh my gosh, who knew all this stuff was happening? But what I'd like for you to do as we go through this, I want to think about the changes that I want you to think about the changes you can make. What can you do to make these situations better? Because one of the things you have to do is you have to recognize that there's a problem before you can try to fix anything. And one of our coworkers was saying, we're going to talk about the digital divide. He didn't even know that this was still a problem because his just comes on every day. And so, hopefully some of these things will be surprising to you, that you're not aware that these are some problems or that these problems are as bad as they are. But I also want you to think about the solutions, and I'm going to share with you guys some resources at the very end that will help you move forward. So yes, we are going to be illuminating regional social justice issues in order to help you drive change. So these are all of the topics that we're going to be covering today. Poverty, the digital divide, which became abruptly apparent last March when we were all sent home. Internet access, affordable housing, transportation issues, healthy food, healthcare, education, and disaster relief is something that I added just last week. So let's get started. So why is social justice important? So we are the sustainability education team here at Dallas College. And what a lot of people don't realize is that social justice is actually part of sustainability. So if we look at sustainability as a stool with a seat and three legs, of course, the one that everybody thinks of is the environmental leg. So you have that. You also have the economic leg that tells businesses that they can make a profit and be environmentally resilient and be socially just all at the same time. And then that leads to the third leg, which is social justice. And there's just so many different issues in that social justice. But the most important thing to remember is that if one of those legs, or one or more of those legs, is shorter than the other, that stool will fall over and it will collapse. And then you do not have a sustainable community, a sustainable economy. Everything just kind of falls apart. So social justice is, 1/3 of the sustainability rubric. So let's talk about what some of these issues are, and maybe we can discuss how how some of these relate to the environment and the economy while being social justice issues. So we always align what we do with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I always pick 3, even though this topic covers all 17. I chose reduced inequalities because of what we faced with COVID-19, and it's not over. The pandemic is still running rampant. It's just we're on a decline, which yay! But I'm hoping that we can get through the holidays. But it really exacerbated some of our societal problems and made them come to the forefront, and they were on the news every single day. And but don't think that COVID was the only thing that caused that. That just brought them to light. All of those things all those problems were already there, but COVID really put a spotlight on them and exacerbated those problems. Sustainable cities and communities, you have to have a socially just community in order to have a sustainable city. You just do. It's, you have to watch out for your homeless, for your hungry, for, you got to make sure the kids are educated. Everybody has access to clean water and electricity, affordable electricity. just all of these things that you probably take for granted when you get up in the morning. You turn on your bedside lamp, you turn on the water faucet and brush your teeth, you put on your coffee pot, all of these things that you do automatically. A lot of people don't get to do those things, all of those things. And it's not always their fault. So just kind of keep those things in mind. And then, of course, climate justice. Almost all of these relate to climate justice and environmental racism and environmental justice, and social justice. It all is one big ball of yarn that's tied up together. So, it's all there. So why are we having this discussion at Dallas College? Because we want to encourage our employees and students to be active citizens in our communities. We really, there's a book that came out several years ago. And of course, the minute I said that there's a book, the name of it fell out of my head. Georgianne, maybe you can help me. That talks about the fact that we've become a nation of consumers, and that consumerism is kind of what drives our existence, not the fact that we are citizens of a community, but we are consumers. And we just want to buy things. And the name of the book is called Affluenza, kind of like influenza, but it's talking about affluence and our ability to buy lots of stuff. So it's, it takes a whole lot of voices to make change happen. And this was a great graphic because so many people are, they're like, well, equality and equity are the same thing, but they're simply not. Equality is when everybody gets the same thing. But equity is when everybody gets what they need to raise up everyone to the same level. So there is a big difference, but this actually is my most favorite graphic, and I share this all the time with other faculty, that the equality, you see all those boxes that they're standing on are the same size. But equity is when the youngest and the smallest is lifted up the most to see over the fence. But why does that fence need to be there at all? Let's just get rid of the fence. And then, problem solved. So yeah, there's a lot of different things that we can be discussing around these topics. So let's start small. Let's start with poverty. So if any of you, this has really been in the news a lot. And if any of you are familiar with the concept of redlining, which came out of the government in the 1930s. This is where the organization that provided home loans, they split up cities, and they determined by who lives here now whether or not this is a good neighborhood, or if this is a good neighborhood, how do we keep those people out of our neighborhoods, which is still really prevalent today. So I found this, I attended this EPA workshop about this, and they shared this map. And as a matter of fact, I am going to, is Derek an employee or a student? Do you know, Georgianne, could you check?
I will look.
Thank you. I will share this, if I can, with you, Derek. But this is actually the redlining map that was created in the 1930s for Dallas and Fort Worth. And Dallas doesn't look so bad, but I don't know Dallas as well as I know Fort Worth. I used to live in Fort Worth. And if you have any knowledge of Fort Worth at all and the different neighborhoods, it is very neighborhood driven. The red is determined as D, the worst places to live. So those are the places that they wanted to keep those people in and not give them the opportunity to move out by offering, by telling them, oh, there are no homes in these other areas, or they would charge them huge interest rates and just really reduce their opportunities. But if you know anything about Fort Worth, this is the north side. And the north side still looks exactly like this. I mean, this map of Fort Worth from the 1930s is very, very accurate. So the short south, the east side, the north side, it is really, really, it has maintained this redlining. And so I would be interested to know, if you look at the Dallas, what does that tell you? Is that accurate? Is that an accurate representation of what the neighborhoods in Dallas look like today? Just let me know. Yay, Derek, you have a DC email address. I'm going to share this with you, and I'm going to throw it in the chat. Fantastic. Oh, I don't know why that just popped up. Let me get rid of that. And stop. Okay, so let me know if that represents Dallas or not. And then also we can look at the poverty in Dallas Fort Worth. So these maps, this mapping software is available to every single Dallas College employee, faculty, or student. So I really encourage you, Derek, now that you have this, all of these are interactive, and you can click on them, you can zoom out, zoom in, you can look at anywhere in the United States on these maps. But what I want you to see is, this is Dallas and this is Fort Worth. Well, knowing what you know about where the most affluent neighborhoods are in Dallas or Fort Worth, the northern areas tend to be a little bit more affluent than anything below I-30. And so you can really tell where the poverty is in the Metroplex. And it's really concentrated in, like I said, in Fort Worth, you're on the north side, on the east side, short south, and then of course in southern Dallas. But what's excellent about this map is it also tells us exactly how many people are being affected and who are they. So in this one census tract, there are 1,300 people who are below the federal poverty line. So that's almost 35% of the residents in this one census tract in southern Dallas lives below the poverty line. And then it also tells us by age how many people. So the people who are most affected, 608 of those are 18 to 59, which is, your working age. It's the age you have a job, you're earning a living. And those are the ones who are living in poverty the most. So it's really, it's an opportunity to do a deep dive and see where the problems are exactly, so that we can implement the solutions in the right places. So it's really, really surprising. And like I said, this is for the entire United States. So you can go out and you can look at where some of the most people who live in poverty. And I'm going to guess that this is Mississippi. And I'm going to click on here. Yes, Mississippi, 31.7% of the people in that county. So I'm at the county level right now. And then I can zoom out to the state level. Oh, nope.
Lori,
Yeah.
I was going to ask, I'm guessing that really dark red in New Mexico or Arizona is probably Indian reservations, I would imagine.
Probably. That's a really good point. And let's see what it says. Yeah, it just says the county. It doesn't say that. So if you know of any that correlate, yeah, you're probably right. Those probably are Indian reservations. So it's excellent data. It comes from the Census Bureau. So it is accurate. This isn't just stuff I made up. So yeah, it's a really good opportunity to see where poverty is in our neighborhoods. And then the redlining. Oh, I jumped past that. Sorry. And then this explains, everything about the different categories. But let's look at the digital divide. Like I said, this really became an issue in March of 2020. So if we look globally, we'll start out big and we'll work our way down. 76% of the U.S. population was using the internet, which is, if you look at this legend here, the darker the blue, the higher amount of people using the internet. Canada was at 92.7% of their population in 2017 was using the internet. Who else was big? Chile, not bad. Saudi Arabia, 94% of their population. The UK, 90.42%. So even more than the United States. Sweden, 93%, Norway, and then Russia, only 76%, and China's even 54% because so much of it is rural. So those are the countries where most people have access to the internet. Of course, you can see the continent of Africa just really. Of course, a lot of these places in Africa, the continent, don't even have access to electricity. So the chances of them having internet access are lower. So what does that digital divide look like in Dallas? So this one, if we look at the legend, these are the percentage of the population who are 25 and older, who are high school graduates, or have a GED and have some college or associate degree that don't have a computer. So remember what I said, that we can give our students computers, but or iPads or whatever, but if they don't have internet access, it doesn't do them any good. So these are the areas, and let's look at some of these. I know that this is near over on the west side, and 14% of the population, 640 people, do not even have a computer in their household. Here's one that's almost 30%, 26%. But if we go up here to North Dallas, oh gosh, only 2% of the households don't have a computer. And let's look at the age of those people. They are there's only 24 of those people. So we can look at, the mid-cities. They're doing pretty good. Fort Worth, again, north side, east side, short south. So it is really, really, now you kind of know where the problem is. So these are the people who don't have a computer. So let's say we give them a computer. Oh, and here is, before I go into broadband, this is a quote that I absolutely love, and I use it all the time now. Without broadband, kids are left behind. And that became very obvious in March of last year. So here's the internet access. How we had pulled out and looked at poverty. This is what the internet access looks like in the United States. So Mississippi, again, leads the way in the fewest number of people with internet access. The next one is New Mexico, that 21% of the households don't have it. Texas is doing pretty good, only 14.8%. But where are those? Where do you think those 14.8% of the population are that don't have internet access? Where would you think, just intuitively, that those people are that don't have internet access? And this is actually an app that I created so that you can explore it and explore the layers and the legend and you can bookmark if you want to look at different places in the United States, and you can also share it. So let's take a look here, and let's look at, now we're looking at the county level. So now it becomes much more obvious where the counties are in the United States that have the least access to internet. So here along the Rio Grande Valley, again, Mississippi, Louisiana, a little bit of Alabama. I'm really surprised by this up here in Maine, that 23% of the households don't have internet access. That was surprising to me. So here we go, like you'd said, Georgia, in the Native American reservations. So it's, Collin County, and what is that, Collin County and Denton County? Yeah, that stick out, that they have the highest amount of access to the internet. In Dallas, 16% of the total households don't have internet access. So 16%, but where are those 16%? So if we go up here and we search for Dallas, Texas, now we can see down to the census tract. That looks familiar, doesn't it? You've seen that before. It looks like the poverty map. It looks like the no computer map. And this is the no internet access map. So you're going to see a lot of this where, it's like, I've seen that before. And this is what social injustice looks like. This is problems. It's not just one problem. It's problem on top of problem on top of problem that just makes it so difficult for them to get out of the situations, the housing situation, the job situation, the education situation that they are in. So it's just levels upon levels and layers upon layers of social injustice. So the darkest areas are 25% and more that do not have access to internet. So you can play with this now that you all have access to this map. So does anybody have any questions so far before we move to affordable housing? Anybody have any questions about the redlining or the computers or internet access? No one? Okay. So we will move on to affordable housing. So this is an excellent quote. Where you put your head at night determines so many things about your life. And think about all the maps that we've seen so far, and then keep this in mind with all the maps we're going to see going forward. It determines where your kids go to school. It determines the air that you breathe, where you shop, and how long it takes for you to get to work. And it also affects so many other things, how much rent you pay, whether or not you have access to heat in the wintertime when we have snowmageddon. It's just so many different things are determined by where you live and where you can afford to live. And there's an interactive map here that you can play with. But I found this study. How much do you need to earn to afford a modest apartment in your state? So the darker blue, you need above $20 an hour in order to afford a modest apartment. So in Texas, if we look at this interactive map, Texas is 21st. You need to make almost $22 an hour in order to afford a modest apartment, a two-bedroom rental home in Dallas. So we have the 21st highest housing wage in the United States. So what does housing affordability look like in Dallas? So this is a county level, and according to these research forum where I found this information, they said that in no state, metropolitan area, or county can a worker earning the federal minimum wage, which is $7.25, or the prevailing state minimum wage, afford a decent 2-bedroom rental home at fair market rent by working a standard 40-hour week. So it amazes me that that people, in order to afford something livable where they can raise their children safely, have to work 2 and 3 jobs in order to afford housing. And if you are familiar with the metric, you should never, housing should not be more than 20% of your take-home pay. But for so many people, it is so much more than that. And then if the car breaks down, if you have an additional expense, all of a sudden your ability to pay for your housing, which is paramount, is put at risk. So if we look for Dallas, which is right here, so 44% of all renter households spend more than 30% of their household income on housing. So it's a large amount of people that do that. So where is that problem? If we go deeper into Dallas, what do you think you're going to see? It's going to be a little bit different. There's still a lot of the darker, but it is not as bad as the previous maps that we have seen. So there is some hope here in this one neighborhood here. This is probably Oak Cliff, maybe. What's the name of that neighborhood that starts with a K? Kind of a more affluent neighborhood in Oak Cliff, that only 28% of all renter households pay more than 30% on there. So maybe I said 20%. It should be 30%. Is that?
Are you talking about Kessler Park?
That's it, Kessler Park. Thank you. Yes. So we can really see where those problems are. So we can see the darkest blue is 62% of people who are paying more than 30% of their household income for rent. The national average is 46. So again, all of this is census data. And then we can look at transportation. I was really interested to see a couple of different things. I was looking at the percentage of workers who commute by driving alone. So that's the purplish colors. So the higher the darker the color, the higher percentage. So the national average is 76. So how many people in our area drive by themselves to work? So where are those neighborhoods? In this area, not. How does that correlate with where is the dark light rail? Now the bus one, it just became a mangled spaghetti mess to try to look at that. But you can actually zoom into this and you can click on each of the different links to see that this is the Baylor station and that it has parking. This is data that I downloaded from DART. So you can see that DART has a lot more areas where there are a lot of stops that people are not driving to work alone. They are possibly carpooling or probably using the light rail since it is so convenient for them to do that. But poor Fort Worth, man, they have one line, the TRE, that goes into downtown Dallas. And then you have the new oh, forget what this one is called. It's right by my house. There's a stop right by my house in North Richland Hills, but it only goes to the airport. So if you work in South Dallas, Southern Dallas, something, below I-30, and you're commuting from Fort Worth, you pretty much have to drive. Otherwise, it is a 2-hour train ride to get to work each way. So, we need to do better on our rail systems. So one of the things, sorry, I didn't mean to give you whiplash there. This was really interesting that the shorter commuter times is an opportunity to escape poverty. And I never thought about it like that before, but for every dollar a community invests in transit, they are generating $4 in economic returns. So the more mass transit you have and the more accessible it is and the more it goes to where people need it to go, more people benefit from that, and it boosts the economy for the entire region. So why does that matter? Because if we look at who does not have a car by race / ethnicity, it is typically people of color, communities of color, who don't have access to transportation outside of public mass transit. So it has reduced since 1990 from 24% to 14%, but that's still a huge gap between the white members of our community, where statistically it's gone from 8 to 6%. So progress has been made, but there's still a huge gap of 8% of the American community, peoples of color who don't have access to a car. So that's, and that is a symptom of income and wealth disparities that are caused by this layering of all of these social injustices. So access to healthy food. I'm going to share a resource with you at the end. I came across an interesting take on food deserts, and they called it food apartheid. And I'm going to learn more about that, but it's kind of that thought that it's not that people in those areas don't have access to healthy food. It's the fact that that's on purpose. And so I want to do a deeper dive in that. If you're interested in that topic of food, I think that would be really interesting to research. So it has more to do with, and here's another great quote from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, that food access is about more than just whether there are grocery stores in the community. It has to do with whether households can afford to purchase that food, because fruits and vegetables tend to be more expensive than the processed food. And that affordability is closely related to rates of employment and the quality of jobs. And when we talk about job quality, we're talking about wages. So those who earn less, and of course we've already talked about how that affects housing. So I created this swipe here to look at supermarket demand versus supply. So we can look here and we can see, of course, that's DFW Airport. Here's Dallas. Here's downtown Dallas right here. We can see that that there is a huge opportunity for grocery stores in this area, but there are zero. But the demand is almost $9 million in demand in this census tract. So now it becomes really obvious, what areas are lacking fresh, healthy food. And then you can also look at this map that shows where is the most organic food purchased. Well, it is above I-30. It's in northern Dallas, and just a little bit in South Dallas here in this area, where we can click on this and see that 411 people in this census tract statistically are expected to eat organic food regularly. Whereas if we look up here in North Dallas, here it is 346 adults. So it's statistically, wow, I cannot say that. Statistically speaking, it is a huge social justice issue. Not only who can afford organic food, but also who has access to it, and who even has access to just a grocery store, and who can afford to purchase the food that's in the grocery store. Healthcare, also a huge indicator that came to light during COVID. We knew that Texas has the most amount of people in the state who do not have health insurance. We have the highest rate of that in the country. And location matters. So here I was looking at the amount of money that is spent on healthcare versus people who have healthcare. And so if we look at this, we can see that most of the area is blue. And so the amount of money spent on healthcare is about $4,600 here in this light blue, kind of a periwinkle color, but the national average is $5,700. But here in southern Dallas, only $3,400 is on average is spent versus the national average of $5,700. If we go up here to North Dallas, Frisco, for instance, they spend almost twice as much than the national average on healthcare. But they're also the ones who tend to be most insured. So the darker the color, the higher rate of non-health insurance coverage. So this is a really, really frightening map. So when I say that Texas has the most uninsured Americans in the country, now it becomes very, very clear why and where that is. And then I also was looking at who has diabetes, because diabetes is also a leading indicator of access to fresh food, fruits and vegetables versus fast food. So I think that you will see, I did not do a correlation here, but you can do one. You can look back at those maps and see if there's a correlation between access to supermarkets, fresh food, and where the diabetes are occurring in our area. So if we look at the insulin users, let's see where we are here. So this is Dallas, this is Fort Worth. Had to kind of get my bearings there, make sure I knew where I was. So most of the higher incidences of people having diabetes, where insulin is needed, is again in southern Dallas. So 1,500 people, but the market potential is 174. Whereas in northern Dallas, it's only 589 people who, statistically speaking, would be insulin dependent with diabetes. But if we look over here to non-insulin users, again, most of it is in southern Dallas. East side, north side, short south, Fort Worth. So, but the rural areas, that was really surprising to me that the rural areas tended to have a lot of that. So we can really see where the problems are because of access to fresh food. So it's really, really interesting when you can do a swipe map and really see the difference. And then the next to last thing was education. So we were looking at in 2019, of course, pre-pandemic, Dallas ISD, the K through 12, had an overall dropout rate of 10.3%. And so what we're looking at here, we're looking at two different types of data overlaid on each other. So the polygons, the census tracts that are filled in with a solid color, those are showing the non-completion, the rates of non-completion of high school. So again, where is that most prevalent? That is most prevalent south of I-30, and a lot here in West Dallas. So if we look at this, it's saying that in this one census tract, just on the other side of downtown Dallas, that 22% of all adults in that census tract do not have a high school, did not finish high school, did not graduate. And then you can look and see exactly what the completion rate is for college. So here's some college. So 22, almost the same exact percentage of people actually completed some college, and then here 4% got an associate's degree. So yay, Dallas College. So you can see where those are. So what I was trying to look at was, how does race align with, is there a correlation between ethnicity and those who did not complete high school? So if you look at the legend over here on the side, you can see that the blue dots are the predominantly African American, non-Hispanic populations. The yellow dots are Hispanic, and then the darker dots are white non-Hispanic. So you're going to see those darker dots up here. 0 adults are not high school graduates in this census tract. And then we got a whole lot more information about those people who live in that neighborhood. So is there a correlation between those who graduated and those who didn't, and their race? So it's just an interesting map to see. And of course, the larger the circle, the higher the proportion of population in that area. So just kind of looking, seeing, that's the great thing about this software, is that you can play with it, you can't break it, and you can just explore all kinds of ideas. And then how much money is spent on education. Again, the darker color here shows the larger amount of money being spent on education than the lower, between how much is spent per household. So again, below I-30, there's a huge disparity between how much money is spent. We can look at it by census tract, and remember that quote that said, "Where you lay your head determines where you go to school, where you work, what you eat." And this really, if this doesn't really bring that home, I don't know what will. So it is really, really interesting to see. And if you really want to be shocked, so the U.S. on average spends $12,600 per pupil. In the United States, Texas spends about $9,600 per student. So we are less than the national average, but we are still better than as countywide than just about anybody else in the state. Here's, I'm going to say that's Houston, San Antonio, or Austin, probably Austin. But now we can really see, holy cow. I mean, you can see the concentrations of where the money is that's being spent on education. What about all these other students who aren't getting the same level of materials, of, safe education buildings? It's just, where is the money going that is being spent on education in the United States? So that's a really great opportunity to explore that. And then all the disasters that we've been having, besides COVID, the hurricanes that have hit the coast, the superstorm that flooded New York again. This is an article that I found that talks about how even in disaster recovery, the white population in areas that are recovering from a disaster do better than communities of color. That the more assets you have to be damaged, the more money you get back. So the fewer possessions you have, the less money you have invested in assets that are available to you, the less money you get back after a disaster, which leaves you no better off than you were before, and it may be even worse. So that's a great article. So what do you do about this? We've got about 10 minutes. What can you do about it? There are two fabulous books that I want to share with you. The first one is Project Drawdown. This came out in 2017. It is by a world-renowned climate speaker, scientist, Paul Hawken. And this is 100 things that we can do to solve the climate crisis that already exist. We don't need to come up with new technology, new ideas. We don't have to be inventive. We already know what the things are that we need to do. We just need to scale them up, and then we'll really make a difference. So you can go to their website, drawdown.org. It is fabulous, all of the different things that you can learn on that. And then just last month, Paul Hawken actually came out with another book called Regeneration, Ending the Climate Crisis in One Generation. But so much of this is more than the climate, because the people who will be affected the most by the climate crisis and climate change and the climate justice are those who experience social injustice. So I really hope that you go through this website. Let me just give you a taste really, really quickly. It goes through, here are all the different things that we can do, and the ones that are already bolded, they give you actual details on what you can do as an individual, what you can do as part of a group, what you can do as a business leader. So if we were to look at urban mobility, which is that mass transit aspect, here are things that individuals can do, and it gives you, links to more information. What can you do as a group? If you're a planner, a transportation planner, what can you do? If you're a mayor of a municipality, if you're an employer, offer bus passes, offer light rail passes like we do to our students. What can government do? What should they do to alleviate this problem? And who is causing the problem? And so here, I love this when I discovered this over the weekend. They actually give you the email accounts for the CEO of Fiat Chrysler. So you've got his email right there, and you can email him and say, get with the program and, get on board with mass transit. It's fabulous. It's really empowering to have this kind of information right here at your fingertips. Who are the key players? What other research can you do? Here are mayors that you can contact in other cities and say, what did you do? How did you do it? There are reading resources, videos, documentaries, just so much information. So for those of you who feel like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming, I can't possibly do anything, this is going to be your source, this regeneration website. There, like I said, the book was just released last month and the website also. So they are building out these resources. They are adding more every week. I really hope that this becomes your go-to, because you can make a difference, and join in with other Dallas College faculty, employees, students. Let's get together and let's make some change happen. Let's grow some sustainability leaders in Dallas. So I am happy to answer any of your questions.
Fabulous. Thank you. So let me look here and see. We've seen all these social justice issues illuminated in the pandemic. Do you think that the issues you talked about today are widely recognized by policy makers?
Yes, I think that they are being widely recognized, but doing something about it is a completely different thing. I think that our policymakers are aware, but they are not willing to move the needle on a lot of these things. I can give you a myriad number of reasons why, but I think the biggest reason is money. We have to remember that so many of our politicians are bought and sold by lobbyists and corporations. And I think that's why regeneration said, the bad actor in mobility is the automotive industry, because, we used to have streetcars everywhere in Dallas, in Fort Worth, in Los Angeles, and the automotive industry came in and said, nope, you need to rip all that out, and we will help, you build roads. And they did. They ripped it out, paved it over, and now we don't have that infrastructure anymore. And now it is so expensive to build streetcar light rail infrastructure. But I also think that people aren't thinking far enough ahead to see the economic benefits. So when I have these discussions with professors and they say, it's so expensive to build rail, I'm like, well, how expensive is it to not build rail? Because if we build rail, how many cars can we get off the road? How much does our stress go down? How much does our air pollution improve? How much more roadways do we not have to build? How many biodiversity are we going to get back because we're not having to build new roads and widen freeways and all of these things? So there's a lot of social impacts that are embedded in the decisions that our policymakers are making. And I just think that a lot of time they don't see past the end of their nose. They think, very short-sightedly, well, this is how much it's going to cost us now, therefore we can't afford it, without taking into consideration the cost, not only the monetary cost, but the cost in social justice, in environment, in healthcare, in housing, all of that comes into play. And I think that's, it's empowering to know that all of these things affect each other. It's also mind-blowing. And I get that. And, I sound like a fire hose when I talk about these things, because it's just so much stuff and it's all combined in together. But I think it's important. We have to know that, and we have to make people realize that if we don't change some of these things, it's going to make it's going to make a lot of things a lot worse. So, yeah, I think that so to come back to your question, I think they're paying attention, but I don't think they're doing anything about it.
We have one closing comment that I think he brings up a great point for a future presentation. It says, these are important facts showing the social disparities in different categories. It would be interesting to see where the major employers are distributed geographically in DFW, because jobs and stable income is where it all begins: housing, transportation, education, etc. It would help if the companies were encouraged to bring their businesses to those areas needing more economic boost, such as in South Dallas and Fort Worth. And so I just want to briefly mention that I was on a North Dallas Chamber of Commerce tour this past week, and it was absolutely fabulous. It was all through the southern sector of Dallas, and the man who is redeveloping Redbird Mall into that's what he's doing. He's redeveloping it not just into a mall, but the whole second floor is going to have businesses. And he's already brought 1,000 really good call center jobs to the area, and they're bringing 600 more in. So we're actually going to have him on as a speaker at a future Sustainable You webinar. So
Fantastic.
I'm sure you'll want to see that one.
So if you'll let me know who asked that question about the businesses, I will actually pull together that data, and I'll be happy to share that. So
I will do that. For privacy reasons, I can't say the name.
Okay. Yep. But you know what I'll do? I'll actually add it, since this is a story map. I will add it to this story map. And so when you see it, in a day or two after I've had the time to gather the data, all you have to do is refresh this story map, and that map will be in there. So, yay, story maps.
Yeah. So once again, thank you so much to everyone who joined us today.